What's going on, everybody? As we enter into the summertime, we get closer to training camp and the actual start of the 2024 NFL season. I thought it would be an interesting idea to go over one move every NFL team should make to really just become a better team, have more wins in 2024. So starting off with the AFC East, we have the Buffalo Bills, and their need is linebacker. They need somebody to step in and improve that unit. Their best player on that unit is Matt Milano, who is an all-pro caliber player, but he is coming off of a pretty devastating injury he suffered pretty early in the year last year. He is also 30 years old heading into next season, so the Bills could look to add somebody to pair with him, as they are still trying to win. I know the Bills lost a lot of people in free agency, but they still have Josh Allen. They still have a top 3 quarterback in the league. They're going to go out there and try to win, and they could get somebody like a Zach Cunningham or a Shaquille Leonard as an insurance policy, at least. Shaquille Leonard did not look good at all when the Eagles signed him mid-season last year, because they had a huge crisis as well at linebacker, and he came in, he just looked a little bit too slow. I mean, just all those surgeries and time off that he's had. He's not the same player when he was, an absolute beast in the middle of the Colts defense several years ago. Zach Cunningham is pretty interesting as well. Don't know how much he has left in the tank. He also played for the Eagles last year and was pretty solid. I think at this point, he's kind of just a good run stopper. You're not going to really ask him to go out there and cover tight ends, cover other players. That's not really his game at this point. I mean, just a few years ago, though, the Texans gave him like a $50 million extension. So, I mean, not too long ago, he was seen as a fairly good linebacker, but I do wonder his impact on a defense at this very second. They also lost Tyrell Dotson, who was the guy that filled in for Milano last fall. I know they drafted a dude in last year's draft, I think it was Dorian Williams, and they also drafted another linebacker this year later in the draft. So maybe they don't want to go out there and get a veteran, but it could be a good insurance policy if Milano does not come back 100%, if he misses some time. It would be good to have a guy that could step in and still, plug a hole in that defense. The Miami Dolphins are up next, and they need an edge rusher. They did use their first-round pick on Chop Robinson, and they did sign Shaq Barrett in free agency, but the projected starters, Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, are both working their way back from significant leg injuries. So maybe somebody like Yannick Ngakoue or Carl Lawson, they could be a good idea to help out the Dolphins' pass rush for the first couple of weeks while Chubb or Phillips might not be ready to go. So I don't mind this for the Dolphins. I know that Carl Lawson has come in and had a visit with them, but nothing has materialized yet. But I don't know how much the Dolphins really want to go out and spend on a pass rusher. They don't have a ton of cap room, and they drafted 2 rookies. They drafted Chop Robinson and they drafted Muhammad Kamara out of Colorado State. So 2 guys that could theoretically help out in the pass rushing unit for them, but it's pretty well known you can never have enough pass rushers. So maybe the Dolphins do want to get another guy to help out while they wait for either one of their studs to come back. The New England Patriots signed Donovan Smith, a left tackle, just getting somebody that can step in and be a solid option. And that is true. There's not a lot of starting left tackle options at this point in the offseason. And they did sign Chukwuemeka Okafor, and they drafted Caden Wallace. But do you want one of those guys protecting Drake May's blind side if he does start the year or play at some point next season? That's a little bit risky. You kind of want a proven veteran who can be at least an average starter. I kind of do like the fit of Donovan Smith there. The only thing I would say is for the Patriots, who are not really in a win now mode, I feel like they might want a younger player, maybe just Caden Wallace, who they just drafted, to get some reps there, but you do want to protect your assets. So maybe if they want to play Drake May early, Donovan Smith makes sense. If not, maybe just roll with one of those younger guys. And the New York Jets signed Connor Williams, who can play center or guard, really be, I guess, the last piece of their offensive line that got a huge amount of moves to fix this offseason. Right now, they do have Joe Tittman at center, their second-year player, so I don't really know. That makes a whole lot of sense to sign Connor Williams to replace him right now. Maybe Williams could slide in at one of those guard spots or even just be some depth pieces, because we do know the Jets have a lot of older, injured type of players on their offensive line. But he did suffer a pretty severe knee injury last year, and there's been some reports that he may even retire because it's so bad. So Connor Williams, I do think he's been really good. He kind of had a career resurgence in Miami. He had a lot of penalties in Dallas with the Cowboys. The Dolphins brought him over on a pretty cheap deal, and he really exceeded expectations. So he's a good player, but I just wonder if he's ever going to play again, or maybe even play next year, because of how severe the knee injury that he suffered in late November last year was. The NFC East, we have Zach Cunningham again for the Dallas Cowboys, and they're another team that really struggled to stop the run. I mean, they had a safety playing linebacker That's kind of like a really popular thing that people like to bring up about the Cowboys defense. I think Jordan Love even mentioned it on his podcast of really the game plan for the Packers in that playoff game was just to run and run right at him. They also lost Leighton Vander Esch. He retired due to his neck injuries that really sucked. But Zach Cunningham could be another guy that has some experience, a little bit older, 29 years old, but could step in and be a solid run stopper. And they have it here. He had a 70.7 run defense grade from PFF last season, 85 tackles in 13 games. So maybe the Cowboys and the Bills battle it out for Zach Cunningham and his services. But him and Eric Kendricks in the second level of the defense, that's, I don't know, it's a little bit concerning to me. If those are your two starting linebackers, inside linebackers, I mean, I don't know. The New York Giants at a tight end, Darren Waller is probably going to retire. That seems to be the direction that it's headed in, that he is not going to be playing on the Giants next season. And you're trying to get the most out of Daniel Jones. So I do like just trying to get another target. And if we're being honest, Waller might be the most proven weapon on the Giants roster right now. So losing him would be a pretty big loss. Don't really know if there's any huge solid options. Maybe they could get like a Logan Thomas. I think he is still out on the free agent market. Just a guy that can come in, get a couple catches for you, move the chains. He could be a decent replacement for Waller. The Philadelphia Eagles, we have signed Byron Pringle. That's a name that I haven't heard of in quite some time, but with Devontae Parker retiring, they might need a third wide receiver. And John Ross, they did sign him, but obviously he's not going to be fitting that Devontae Parker role, which is kind of a jump ball receiver. But they already have A.J. Brown, though, to kind of fit that role. Why would they really need two guys that, can be 50-50 ball receivers? You kind of want to have all your receivers do kind of different things. You got Smitty to be your route runner, your intermediate guy, A.J. Brown to be your 50-50 ball. I kind of like John Ross actually just being the deep threat for that offense. But even with his speed, I know he hasn't really worked out in the NFL. But I don't know if Byron Pringle is the guy you want to bring in if you want some wide receiver depth. I think Mecole Hardman is still in the free agent market. He could be a good addition. Maybe even Hunter Renfrow. He's also out there. So I don't really love Byron Pringle, and that's a name that I like a little bit more as well. Michael Thomas Jr. going to the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels, getting him as much weaponry as you can. I actually kind of like that. Although Thomas Jr. has a really big fall off from what he was with Drew Brees when he was leading the league in receiving yards. There's some questions about his character, how he will be in a locker room. Do you really want him around a fairly young team with a new rookie quarterback? But I could see the role of him being the slot wide receiver. It says right now Luke McCaffrey is currently projected to be the team's starting slot receiver. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know a ton about Luke McCaffrey and what to expect from him as a rookie, but Michael Thomas I still think has the skill set. I mean, he was known as Slant Man. I think he still has the skill set to be in the slot and at least be a solid, reliable option. Injury concerns, character concerns, I would understand if they didn't want to bring him in. But if you want a veteran wide receiver who can kind of fit the role that they need on that offense, Michael Thomas Jr., he makes sense. AFC North now, the Baltimore Ravens bringing back Yannick Ngakoue. The Ravens obviously still trying to be a Super Bowl caliber team. They lost a pretty good amount of players this offseason, and that's including Jadeveon Clowney, who was second on the team with 9.5 sacks. I think Justin Madubuike was number 1. But they could add a veteran. I feel like that's pretty common to what the Ravens do. I mean, they just get these longtime guys that haven't really had success in recent years. I mean, Clowney, his stock was fairly low before last season with the Ravens. Comes in, has a great season, a lot of pressures, puts up, good sack number. And then he gets a fairly big deal with the Carolina Panthers. Kyle Van Noy, he was another guy. Older veteran, hadn't really done anything of substance for a couple years and then joined the Ravens, had a good season. And he's back again to potentially start for them. So the Ravens do that pretty often. I think Ngakoue would be a good option. I mean, his stock used to be super high. I mean, I think he got traded for like a premium pick a few years ago. I can't exactly remember, but I think he had like the most sacks out of anybody the first like 3 or 4 years in their career. I mean, he was a fairly good designated pass rusher a few seasons ago. Doesn't have that same stock anymore, hence why he is still a free agent. But if anybody was gonna turn around his career, could be the Baltimore Ravens. The Cincinnati Bengals add an interior offensive lineman. They have done a lot this offseason to really make sure Joe Burrow can just stay healthy, continue to protect him. They went out and got Trent Brown to be the right tackle. Last offseason got Orlando Brown, so they have 2 massive tackles. And then in the draft, they also got Amarius Mims, another huge human. So they have 3 really good options at either tackle position, but they still could use some help in the interior of their offensive line. And Cordell Volson is projected right now to be their starter at left guard, and he gave up 5 sacks in 38 pressures last season. That is definitely not good. And for Burrow, who is coming off of a pretty devastating injury, I mean, there's been some reports about, hey, Will he ever get back to 100%? You want to make sure that he can stay upright and he's not taking hit after hit this offseason. Justin Pugh, Mark Lewinsky, a couple of guys that could step in right away, veterans that might be a better option than Volson. The Cleveland Browns signed Stephon Gilmore or Steven Nelson, and their defense was really, really good last year. They brought back most of their players, but they could use potentially an upgrade at the second starting cornerback spot. Martin Emerson, solid player, but you could get at least somebody that could step in, compete with him, or just add some more depth. I think if they did get Stephon Gilmore, he probably would start over Emerson. I wonder what his asking price would be at this point, though. I don't think the Browns have a ton of money to spend. I think Gilmore's probably going to be going at a 1-year deal basis at this point in his career. But the Browns roster as a whole is still very, very good. Just kind of a question mark if Deshaun Watson can ball out this year, bring him to the promised land, bring him to the playoffs at least. But yeah, they don't really have a ton of needs. Maybe add another veteran linebacker because I know they lost a couple this offseason. They brought in like Devin Bush to be one of those replacements. But I do think getting Stephon Gilmore could be interesting in Cleveland. The Pittsburgh Steelers go get Nick Gates for your offensive line. 3 out of the 5 projected starting offensive linemen will be on rookie contracts, which is fairly good. The Steelers have put a lot of capital into their offensive line the last 2 drafts, but Gates is a guy that has experience playing either guard position, and he can even slide in at center. And even then, he could just be a decent backup option for the team. And every team usually has a lot of offensive line injuries every single season. It's pretty common for at least 2 starters to miss some time. Nick Gates could be a guy that any team could pick up. But for the Steelers that do have a lot of young guys, it could be beneficial to get a guy that has experience playing, can help those guys out, and also contribute as a depth piece if any of them get banged up. He's versatile, can play anywhere on the interior. The NFC North, the Chicago Bears sign a pass rusher, and I think this is probably one of the easier ones on the list. They do have Montez Sweat, who is a Pro Bowl caliber edge player. The Bears don't really have another pass rusher. 5th round pick, Austin Booker, DeMarcus Walker. I don't really think either of those guys in 2024 are going to be seen as a good starting edge rusher. So maybe going out and getting somebody like Carl Lawson, Romeo Okwara, or even Marcus Golden would be a pretty good idea to improve the team's 3rd down defense. Just get a designated pass rusher in there. I do think that's the biggest hole right now on the Bears roster, is just getting someone to go after the quarterback opposite of Montez Sweat. That's why I had them taking either an edge rusher or even an interior defensive lineman in a lot of my mock drafts with their 9th pick. Obviously, didn't like to do that, took Rome Odunze, but maybe getting one of these veterans could be an interesting acquisition at this point in the offseason to help out that defense. The Detroit Lions signed Tashawn Gibson Sr., Kirby Joseph, their starter last year, had a 52.3 coverage grade according to Pro Football Focus, and the Lions secondary definitely was not very good last year, probably the weakest unit of their team. They've been trying to fix up that defense the last couple of years, and it should be even better again next year. DJ Reader in free agency should be a good addition. Brought in some cornerback help, headlined by Terrion Arnold in the NFL draft. But Gibson, he could be an interesting addition. He's 34 years old, but he does have some playoff experience. Spent last year with San Francisco, actually beat the Lions in the NFC Championship game. But I do not mind this. Kirby Joseph has been pretty up and down in his career so far, and getting somebody that could at least bring some competition, or maybe even step in if Kirby Joseph is struggling a little bit too much. If you have a guy that has experience, can be a great leader for the defense that's relatively pretty young. The Green Bay Packers add an interior offensive lineman, another position that I had pretty much mocked to the Packers a lot throughout the NFL draft process. They're going to reshuffle their offensive line. Zach Tom to center potentially, Josh Myers over to right guard. And Myers is another guy that's been kind of up and down. So getting somebody that could also compete with him and maybe even step in, not a bad idea. And going back earlier to what I said about the Pittsburgh Steelers, every team deals with a ton of injuries on their offensive line. It's always good to just keep adding in veterans because you never know who is actually going to be getting banged up, who you're going to need. So maybe even Nick Gates for the Packers could be an option, but always adding in depth to a unit that does have, a lack of overall talent could be a good addition. The Minnesota Vikings re-signed Dalton Risner, and that's exactly what they did. Blake Brendel was their current left guard, but they signed Risner, I think a couple of days ago, to a contract. I think they signed him in the middle of last season. Played pretty good for them, and now he's going to be back again starting. He knows the offense, has experience, and he didn't allow a sack in 2023. As the Vikings do roll out a new quarterback this year, maybe even JJ McCarthy, a rookie, you want to make sure the offensive line, everything around him is solidified, and getting Risner back, I think, does exactly that. Moving on to the AFC South and the Houston Texans, they have to add a linebacker. They lost to Blake Cashman in free agency. They did bring in Al Shair, I think, from the Titans. I think that's where he was playing. But Henry To'oTo'o is projected to be a starter this fall, despite getting benched in the second half of 2023 and posting a 41.7 grade from Pro Football Focus. That probably has to be one of the worst grades last season. It's one of the last weak spots on the Texans roster, so adding yet another veteran could be a good option for them. Maybe bring back Zach Cunningham. Kind of a little reunion there. We already talked about another veteran linebacker, Shaquille Leonard. They could bring him back. Played in the division, they know him pretty well. Or even Quan Alexander. He could be a fairly interesting addition as well. And I do wonder if there's any crossover between him and D'Amico Ryans, because I think he was in San Francisco. So that could be yet another semi-reunion in Houston. The Indianapolis Colts bring back Stephon Gilmore. I thought corner, again, was a huge need for the Colts in the draft. I thought they were going to use their 15th pick on it, elected to go with a pass rusher to make that unit even more stacked. But I would really like this for them as well. Stephon Gilmore, he was fairly good in Indianapolis, and they do need somebody to help out in that unit. Kenny Moore and Juju Brents are the projected corners right now, and I think Kenny Moore is more projected to be a slot corner and not be a guy in the boundary full time. So getting Stephon Gilmore could be a huge help to that secondary. And the Jaguars, it's the exact same thing. They need a cornerback. I thought in the draft again, that was going to be a huge need that they went after with their first round pick, elected to go with wide receiver, help out Trevor Lawrence. I understand it, but they lost one of their top cornerbacks in Darius Williams from a season ago. And Ronald Darby is supposed to be their starting cornerback opposite of Tyson Campbell. Darby was fairly good for the Ravens last year. I don't know if he's like a top echelon cornerback number 2 or a boundary corner. I think he's just a solid option, and Tyson Campbell also has dealt with some injuries, missed a few games here and there. So getting somebody like Stephon Gilmore, Steven Nelson, Adoree Jackson, I've even seen maybe even trade for Marcus Lattimore of the New Orleans Saints, who have a lot of depth at cornerback. Maybe they don't want to pay that contract anymore, want to get some more draft capital back. The Jaguars trade for a superstar corner. Could see it happening. Is it super realistic? I don't think so at this point, but I do think adding a corner could be a really big addition for the Jags. I know they added somebody a little bit later in the draft, but you also don't want to rely on kind of a middle round pick to step in and start for you for at least, a big bulk of the season. And then the Tennessee Titans. First one that I'm a little bit about, add an offensive tackle. So they added J.C. Latham, obviously their first round pick in the draft, and Dylan Raduns is currently slated to be their right tackle. I still really do wonder if they're not going to play Peter Skronsky at right tackle. I mean, they drafted him fairly high last year. I know he might not have the prototypical arm length or size to play a tackle spot, but he played it a lot at college. I think he still has that potential to play right tackle, and if he does that, then you have your two bookend tackles, fairly highly drafted players, still fairly young on rookie deals, in Latham and Skronsky. But I guess if they do not want to play him at right tackle, you could even maybe move Latham to right tackle and sign Donovan Smith, who's pictured below, bring him in as well. David Bakhtiari is also a free agent. I don't know if he will be willing to play right tackle, so again, probably have to move Latham there. So they could do some mix and matching with some of these veterans. I think the easiest solution for the Titans is just Latham, left tackle, Skronsky, right tackle. At least just experiment, see how it goes, and then really go from there. The NFC South now, the Atlanta Falcons. During the draft process, another team that I said could use some cornerback help, and there's a lot of Falcon fans that were not very happy with me for saying that. They were like, we're fine at corner. We don't need help. We don't need to draft one. I could see this, or I could see a pass rusher. They still need help rushing the quarterback. They did not address it in the draft. I thought Dallas Turner was kind of like a borderline lock to go there, and then they drafted Michael Penix, and they didn't really address the pass rusher unit. But adding some pieces to their defense would make sense. I'm not exactly sure what Raheem Morris is expecting from that unit this year. I guess he did get a good amount out of the Rams defense, which had kind of a lot of no-name players, a lot of young guys. So maybe he does it again with the Falcons, but I do think getting a corner opposite of AJ Terrell makes sense. Ability to move Clark Phillips to the nickel would make a little bit more sense if you get a veteran corner to play opposite of Terrell, or get a pass rusher because your pass rush is still not too good. The Carolina Panthers, another team that needs to add a cornerback. J.C. Horn, a really, really good player when he's on the field. The problem is he just rarely ever is. They did bring in Dane Jackson from the Buffalo Bills to be their other corner. But again, I thought the Panthers could have been a team that added a cornerback early, maybe even in the second round with one of their picks, elected not to, drafted Xavier Legette. But maybe getting Adoree Jackson, or maybe, hey, Stephon Gilmore. Does he want to come and play for the Panthers as well? Get him and Clowney, two veterans. But I just don't think you can rely on J.C. Horn to play a full season. And if he goes down and Dane Jackson is your only other corner, you're looking at barbecue chicken in the secondary. New Orleans Saints, another team that should sign Donovan Smith. They used their first round pick on Talisa Fuaga, had that mocked a couple of times, really like that fit. But Trevor Penning is supposed to be their left tackle, and he has really struggled since being drafted the team a couple years ago. And we know Derek Carr, he struggles when he's under pressure. It's kind of a known thing about Derek Carr. So maybe getting some depth behind him, where if he does struggle, say Penning, you can just come sit on the bench. We're going to bring in a veteran like Donovan Smith, David Bakhtiari. It does make sense for the Saints to do that. They are trying to win because Dennis Allen, he's on the hot seat. Mickey Loomis, he's kind of on the hot seat. And even Derek Carr, he's kind of on the hot seat. So if they got to win this year, you want to make sure that you have at least a solid option at left tackle. Donovan Smith, David Bakhtiari, I kind of like that. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to add a short yardage running back. Rachaad White was fairly good last year, but it was kind of more in the receiving game. I don't think he really had a ton of rushing yards. Yeah, 990 on 272 carries, so not very good. But adding a bruiser to complement him could be fairly interesting. I know that Kareem Hunt is on the free agent market. He had a fairly good end of the season with the Browns last year. Leonard Fournette, maybe even bring him back. That could be fairly interesting. They did use a 4th round pick on Bucky Irving, but again, he's a little bit of a smaller running back. He's not going to be a guy that you're going to hand the ball to in the goal line. And I do think the Bucs struggled a little bit with that last year in terms of picking up 3rd and short, also just goal to go. So Kareem Hunt, I kind of like that fit in Tampa. The AFC West, the Denver Broncos add a linebacker. So a lot of these teams have these same needs. I've seen linebacker a ton. I've seen Michael Thomas right below for the Chiefs a ton. I've seen offensive line. I've seen corner. Add a linebacker for the Broncos. They did lose Josie Jewell in free agency and Drew Sanders, who really was hoping that he would be the replacement. Tore his Achilles on the first day of OTAs. That just is awful to hear. They signed Cody Barton earlier this spring, but he struggled last year in Washington, so they could elect to find yet another replacement. We've already talked about him: Zach Cunningham, Quan Alexander, or even Shaquille Leonard. Those are really the 3 hot names right now in the free agent market. Maybe somebody gets cut during training camp or a little bit before. Who knows how that will all play out. But for right now, those are the 3 names. Broncos are just in a weird spot. I do think they could bring one of those guys, but are they really trying to win this year? They got rid of Russell Wilson. They're going to be paying his salary for the next couple of years. Bo Nix, they drafted him pretty early in the draft. He's going to be their quarterback of the future. But there's still just so many holes in that team. They don't really have a ton of capital. So they're kind of rebuilding, and I don't think they're going to be super good next year because of how their division is. And also just the AFC, it's stacked. So I don't think the Broncos are going to be very good next year. Probably could be one of the worst teams in the league. Are they really going to go out and get a veteran? They probably just want to sign a guy off the street, a young guy, to see what he can do. The Chiefs signed Michael Thomas. I don't love that fit, I'm going to be honest. So they have Marquise Hollywood Brown, who they signed in free agency. They used their 1st round pick on Xavier Worthy. And then we have the whole thing with Rashee Rice. Is he going to get suspended? Probably. How long? We do not know yet. So maybe they could use another wide receiver, but even if they didn't get another one, Rashee Rice misses half the season. I still think their wide receiver core is better than it was last year. I mean, you have Worthy and Hollywood Brown, 2 vertical, spread the field type of wide receivers. You still have Travis Kelce as well. And then you got Mahomes. He's already proven you don't need a ton of really good wide receivers. Maybe Michael Thomas to be their intermediate slant route runner, contested guy in the middle of the field. Maybe he could play that role, but I don't know if he's worth the headache for the Chiefs, who are trying, to win 3 straight Super Bowls. The Raiders. I know I said this a lot, but again, another team I thought was going to invest in the cornerback position. They didn't even do it in the draft until fairly late. Steven Nelson, Stephon Gilmore. Those seems to be the 2 hot names right now in the veteran cornerback market. All these teams probably are just going to be battling for both these guys. Who can get their services? They have Jack Jones, who they signed in the middle of last year. He actually had fairly good end of the season. And they have Nate Hobbs, who I do like, but he's not even getting 1st team reps right now. It's Jacorian Bennett, who they drafted last year in the draft. So the Raiders, who are trying to win because of their free agent moves, getting Christian Wilkins, bringing Gardner Minshew, they could elect to get somebody that's a little bit more ready to step in right away and play. And that, of course, is Steven Nelson or Stephon Gilmore. And then the Los Angeles Chargers add a veteran wide receiver. They have Quentin Johnston, who did not appear super good last year. A lot of drops, just did not look like the guy we saw from TCU. They did draft Ladd McConkey pretty early in the 2nd round. I feel like he more projects to be a slot wide receiver. And before Charger fans get upset, yes, he can play on the outside. Yes, he can do more than just be a designated slot guy. But with his size and really his skill set, he's better suited to be in the slot. I think that's what Jim Harbaugh is primarily going to use him in. The receiver market, though, is fairly thin, so I think DJ Chark is actually a fairly good signing at this point. Having him, Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey, and then Joshua Palmer, that's a pretty decent core when you consider all the moves the Chargers did this offseason, getting rid of Keenan Allen, getting rid of Mike Williams. I feel like they pivoted fairly well. And last but not least, the NFC West. Starting off with the Arizona Cardinals, bring back Marcus Golden, another team that really struggled to get a pass rush last year. I thought pretty early on they were going to do that in the draft, and they kind of did. They got Darius Robinson in the first round, but I don't know if he's going to project to be a permanent edge rusher, if they're going to use him on the interior. He's pretty versatile, but again, I don't know how he's going to be off the edge on a down-to-down basis. So bring back yet another designated pass rusher, and Marcus Golden could serve them fairly well. They mentioned here Zaven Collins' move to edge last year was not fairly good, and BJ Ojulari is pretty much their best pass rusher right now. I guess depending on how they think about Darius Robinson and what he can do off the edge, maybe they don't want to go out and get another veteran to stunt his growth, but I wouldn't mind this for the Cardinals to get a more proven guy and also just be a leader for the young guys on that unit. The Los Angeles Rams, add a linebacker. Where have I seen that before? Ernest Jones. He was very solid in 2023, but Christian Roseboom struggled. He's one of their 2 starting inside linebackers, and if they do want to make a deep playoff run this year, they might want to address that. We've been over it. Quan Alexander, Zach Cunningham, Shaquille Leonard. Those are the 3 names right now on the free agent market. If you do want a veteran linebacker, those are the options. The 49ers, a new name that we have not seen is Greg Van Roten, another interior offensive lineman. The 49ers offensive line was not super good last year. I don't know if you've seen the press conference of their offensive line coach, Chris Forster. It was a pretty interesting interview. He basically just said, you just need to be an okay player, and we're going to get the most out of you. You can play in our scheme. We can make it work. Greg Van Roten could be another guy that, hey, he could fit that baseline where he steps in. Solid player for the 49ers. Add some more depth to their offensive line, which did have some ups and downs last year. And last but not least, we did have to end with another linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. Quan Alexander, Zach Cunningham, Shaquille Leonard. The 3 options right now. They lost Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks. Both leave in free agency, and Devin Bush. So they had a lot of turnover at that position. They did sign Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson. Baker with a lot of injuries last year for the Dolphins, and he's a fairly good player. I don't think he's really anything special. He's not great against the run because he is a smaller linebacker, and in open space and in coverage, he can struggle. Tyrell Dodson was really good for the Bills last year, though, so I do like bringing him in, and also, I guess, Baker to just kind of replace some of the veterans they also did let leave. But maybe getting one of those 3 guys we have talked about all video long could serve Seattle well. But that is one move that every NFL team should make before the start of the 2024 NFL season. Let me know in the comment section down below what move you think your favorite team should make to give them the best chance to win before next season begins. Also, let me know if you want to see other videos like this, kind of a new style. Haven't really done something like this before, so let me know what you think about it down below. But subscribe to the channel if you are new. Drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.